From Garage to Galaxy, the Jeff Bezos story, YouTube documentary script. Approximately 30 minutes, approximately 4,800 words. Section 1. The Hook. In 1994, one man left behind everything most people spend a lifetime chasing. A prestigious job on Wall Street, a six-figure salary, respect, security, the kind of life your parents brag about at dinner parties. He quit, he packed his car, and he drove all the way across America to start a business in a garage. His idea seemed insane. His friends thought he'd lost his mind. The smartest people in the room told him it would never work. Today, that garage company is worth over $1 trillion. And the man who drove that car, Jeffrey Preston Bezos, became for a time the richest human being who ever lived. This is the story of how that happened. And it begins not on Wall Street, not in a garage, but in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where a young boy was already rewiring the world in his head. Jeffrey Preston Jorgensen was born on January 12, 1964, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. His mother, Jacqueline, was just 17 years old. His biological father, Ted Jorgensen, was a circus performer. The marriage lasted barely 2 years. When Jeff was 4, his mother remarried, a Cuban immigrant named Miguel Bezos, who had arrived in America at 16 with almost nothing to his name. Miguel worked his way through college, became an engineer at Exxon, and adopted young Jeffrey. The boy took his stepfather's surname. He would keep it forever. From the very beginning, there were signs that Jeff Bezos wasn't wired like other children. Not in the way you see in feel-good movies. The quiet genius who gets bullied and becomes a billionaire. No, Jeff Bezos was relentlessly, almost alarmingly curious. He didn't just want to know how things worked. He needed to know. And when he couldn't figure it out, he took things apart. His grandmother's house in Cotala, Texas became his summer laboratory. He spent months there every year, working alongside his grandfather, a retired official of the Atomic Energy Commission. Together they fixed machinery, built windmills, laid tile, vaccinated cattle. Jeff's grandfather taught him something that school never could. If you want something done right, figure it out yourself. Don't wait for someone else to solve your problem. By the time Jeff was 10, he had turned his bedroom into a science experiment. His parents put an electric alarm on his door, not to keep intruders out, but to keep Jeff in, because he kept sneaking out to work on his projects in the middle of the night. At 12, he built an automatic gate for the family driveway using an old clock motor. At 13, he constructed a solar cooker out of aluminum foil. His teachers called him gifted. The word barely scratched the surface. Then came high school, Miami Palmetto Senior High School in Florida, where Jeff's intellectual ambitions collided with his first taste of real competition. He excelled. He became valedictorian. He won the Silver Knight Award, one of the most prestigious student honors in Florida. And he fell in love, not with a person, not yet, but with the cosmos. His valedictory speech was about space, about the colonization of the solar system, about humanity's destiny beyond Earth. He spoke about it with the certainty of someone who didn't think it was a dream. He thought it was a plan. Princeton University, 1982. Jeff Bezos arrives as a freshman intending to study physics. And for the first few weeks, everything goes according to plan. He is smart. He has always been the smartest person in every room he has entered. Then he walks into his first advanced quantum mechanics course. And for the first time in his life, Jeff Bezos hits a wall. There are 3 students in that class who can solve a particularly grueling partial differential equation. Jeff is not one of them. He sits with one of them for an hour, watching this other student work through the problem with a kind of effortless intuition that Jeff simply does not possess. What happens next is one of the most important moments in the Jeff Bezos story, not because of what he achieved, but because of how he responded to failure. He walked out of that quantum mechanics session and changed his major to computer science and electrical engineering. He didn't fight the current. He redirected it. This was not defeat. This was intelligence applied to intelligence. Understanding where your gifts are sharpest and aiming them there without ego. It would become one of the defining patterns of his career. At Princeton, Bezos graduated summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa. He was president of the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space Club. He was already thinking about the long game, not just 4 years ahead, decades ahead. After graduation, Wall Street came calling. And when Wall Street calls a Princeton summa cum laude with a computer science degree in the late 1980s, it calls loudly. Jeff joined Fitel, a fintech startup. Then Bankers Trust. Then, in 1990, he landed at a hedge fund called D.E. Shaw, one of the most technologically sophisticated trading firms on the planet. D.E. Shaw was not a normal hedge fund. It was a firm built on algorithms, data, and the application of scientific thinking to markets. Jeff thrived. By 1992, at the age of 28, he had been promoted to senior vice president, one of the youngest SVPs in the firm's history. He was earning enormous money. He had a corner office with a view. He had, by any conventional measure, made it. He could have stayed. Many people in his position did. The comfort of prestige has a gravity all its own. But Jeff Bezos was never particularly interested in comfort. He was interested in something else entirely. And in 1993, he read a statistic that would change the course of history. The year is 1993. Jeff Bezos is at his desk at D.E. Shaw, and he is reading a report about the growth of the Internet. The number he sees is 2,300%, the annual growth rate of web usage at that time. Let that number sit for a moment. Not 2%, not 20%, 2,300% per year. Bezos stops reading. He stares at that number, and he begins to think. He later described this moment as confronting what he would come to call a regret minimization framework. The idea was simple. Imagine yourself at 80 years old, looking back at your life. Which decisions would you regret? Not the ones that failed, the ones you never made. Jeff Bezos asked himself, if the internet is growing this fast, if this wave is coming, and I don't try to build something on it, will I regret that at 80? The answer came immediately. Yes, without question. Yes. He began to build a list. What could you sell on the internet? He thought about the characteristics of the ideal first product. Something with massive selection, something cheap to ship, something standardized enough that description was easy and returns were rare. He considered 20 product categories. He kept coming back to one: books. There were 3 million books in print at any given time. No physical store could carry more than a fraction of that, but an internet bookstore could carry all of them. Every title, every author, every obscure out-of-print volume that a collector in Montana couldn't find within 500 miles. The selection advantage was overwhelming. The shipping was straightforward. The product was standardized. And, critically, books were a commodity people were already comfortable buying by description without touching first. The idea was elegant. Bezos was certain. But there was one person he still had to convince: his boss. He went to David Shaw, founder of D.E. Shaw, and told him he was leaving to start an internet bookstore. Shaw asked him to think about it for 2 days before making any decision. 2 days later, Bezos came back. He was leaving. Shaw reportedly told him it was a good idea, but it would be an even better idea for someone who didn't have a great job already. Jeff Bezos thought about being 80 years old. He handed in his resignation. The year is 1994. Jeff Bezos and his wife Mackenzie load their belongings into a car and leave New York. The plan is simple and completely insane. Drive to Seattle, start a company, sell books on the internet. Jeff will write the business plan in the passenger seat. Mackenzie will drive. Mackenzie Bezos, soon to be Mackenzie Scott, was herself a Princeton graduate, a former assistant to Toni Morrison, and someone whose intelligence and calm resolve would prove, over the years, to be as essential to Amazon's founding as any algorithm Jeff would ever design. Mile by mile across America, Bezos built the framework of what would become Amazon. Pricing models, supplier relationships, warehouse logistics, customer acquisition. He was not dreaming vaguely. He was engineering specifically. The difference matters. They chose Seattle for specific reasons. It was home to a growing technology workforce. It was close to a major book wholesaler in Roseburg, Oregon. And Washington State had a small enough population that Bezos could for a while collect sales tax from only a fraction of the national customer base, a tax arbitrage that would give him a significant edge. They moved into a rented house in Bellevue, Washington. Jeff turned the garage into an office. He bought the desks from Home Depot and built them himself, cutting plywood doors and bolting them to wooden legs. The total cost of each desk was about $60. He would tell this story for years afterward, not as an apology, but as a point of pride. He called the company Cadabra, as in abracadabra. His lawyer misheard it as cadaver. Bezos reconsidered. He wanted a name that started with A, so it would appear near the top of alphabetical lists, a crucial advantage in the pre-Google era of internet directories. He opened a dictionary. He landed on Amazon, the largest river in the world. He wanted to build the largest bookstore in the world. The name felt like a prophecy. On July 5th, 1994, Amazon.com was officially incorporated. A year later, on July 16, 1995, the website went live. Within 30 days of launch, Amazon had shipped books to customers in all 50 states and 45 countries. Jeff had sent emails to 300 friends asking them to try the site. The word spread far beyond that. Bezos had expected to turn a profit in 4 or 5 years. He hadn't expected, couldn't have expected, what was coming next. Within 60 days, Amazon was doing $20,000 a week in sales. In the first year, they generated $511,000 in revenue. But almost none of it was profit. And that, as it turned out, was completely intentional. Section 6. Everyone said it wouldn't work. The early days of Amazon were not triumphant. They were exhausting. Jeff and Mackenzie packed books themselves. They drove orders to the post office in their own car. The garage was so cramped that Jeff worked on his knees on the concrete floor. Mackenzie handled the accounting. A team of 5 people operated out of a space that smelled of sawdust and ambition. The press noticed Amazon quickly, and the coverage was a strange mixture of fascination and condescension. Could you really trust a company you couldn't see? Would people give their credit card numbers to a website? Was an internet bookstore even a real business? The investors were harder to convince. Bezos pitched 60 potential angel investors. 20 of them said yes, investing around $50,000 each. The other 40 said no. One of those 40 later told a reporter it was the worst decision he had ever made. Wall Street was particularly brutal. Analysts who had spent years valuing companies on earnings, profits, dividends, tangible returns, looked at Amazon and saw only losses. Amazon was not profitable. Amazon had never been profitable. Amazon appeared to have no interest in becoming profitable. That last part was true, and it was genius. Bezos had a simple, radical theory. In the early days of a massive market, the right strategy is to grow. Not to profit, to grow. Every dollar you could earn in short-term profits was a dollar you could instead reinvest in building infrastructure, expanding selection, reducing prices, and acquiring customers. If you won the long game, the profits would come. If you chased short-term profits and lost the long game, the profits would be irrelevant. He called it get big fast, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. By 1997, Amazon had gone public on the NASDAQ at $18 a share. The IPO raised $54 million. Jeff Bezos was now, on paper, worth over $100 million. The press called him a visionary. Analysts called the stock wildly overvalued. Investors called it both things in the same sentence. But nobody, not even Bezos, was prepared for what happened next. Between 1996 and 1999, Amazon grew at a velocity that seemed to bend the laws of business physics. In 1996, revenue was $15.7 million. In 1997, $147 million. In 1998, $610 million. In 1999, $1.6 billion. Books had been the entry point. But Bezos always knew books were just the beginning. In 1998, Amazon launched music and DVDs. In 1999, electronics, toys, software, video games. The company was transforming from a bookstore into something nobody had a word for yet. Bezos had a phrase he used internally, the everything store. Not an online bookstore, not a tech company, an everything store. A place where you could buy anything and have it arrive at your door faster than you thought possible, at a price lower than anywhere else. The customer obsession was not marketing language. It was operational doctrine. At Amazon, every strategic decision was filtered through a single question. Is this better for the customer? Not better for Amazon's margins. Not better for the stock price. Better for the customer. Bezos genuinely believed, and would say publicly, repeatedly for decades, that in the long run, what was best for the customer would also be best for Amazon. The alignment was perfect. If you built enough customer trust, profit would follow. In 1999, Time magazine named Jeff Bezos Person of the Year. He was 35 years old. Amazon was worth $20 billion. The future seemed unlimited. And then, in the space of 18 months, the entire internet industry nearly ceased to exist. March 10th, 2000. The Nasdaq Composite Index reaches its peak, 5,048 points. Then, over the next 18 months, it falls, and falls, and falls. By October 2002, it has lost 78% of its value. Hundreds of internet companies, companies with millions of dollars in funding, Companies with famous names, companies that the smartest analysts in the world had called the future, simply vanish. Amazon does not vanish, but it comes close. Amazon's stock, which had climbed as high as $107 per share in 1999, falls to just $5.97 by October 2001. The company has hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Analysts at Lehman Brothers publish a note suggesting Amazon may need to declare bankruptcy. The press begins writing obituaries. Jeff Bezos does not hold a press conference to reassure Wall Street. He does not issue soothing statements. He goes to work. In 2001, Amazon, for the first time in its history, turns its focus toward profitability. Not because Bezos has abandoned his long-term philosophy, but because survival requires it. He lays off 15% of the workforce. He closes distribution centers. He ruthlessly cuts costs in every department where cutting won't damage the customer experience. And then, just barely, it works. In the fourth quarter of 2001, Amazon posts its first ever operating profit, $5 million. It is a thin margin on a billion-dollar revenue base, but it is proof of something crucial. The model works. The company can be profitable. It has chosen not to be profitable in the pursuit of growth, and that choice was strategic, not structural. The obituaries stopped being written. The analysts updated their models. The stock began, slowly, to climb. Jeff Bezos had survived the greatest financial catastrophe in the history of the internet industry. He was leaner, harder, more certain than ever. And he had a new idea. An idea so audacious that even the people inside Amazon thought it might be the thing that finally broke him. The year is 2003. Amazon is still recovering from the dot-com crash. The company is profitable but fragile. Every capital expenditure is scrutinized. And in this context, a small team inside Amazon presents Jeff Bezos with a proposal. Build a platform that allows Amazon's internal developers to access computing infrastructure, storage, processing, databases, through simple, standardized interfaces. The idea was born out of necessity. Amazon's engineering teams were spending enormous time and money building and rebuilding basic infrastructure from scratch for each new project. A shared platform would make them faster. Bezos immediately understood something else. If Amazon needed this infrastructure, every company in the world needed it too. Amazon Web Services officially launched in 2006. It offered computing power, storage, and database services on a pay-as-you-go basis. You used what you needed when you needed it and paid only for that. No servers to buy, no infrastructure to maintain, no capital investment. The implications were staggering. Suddenly, a two-person startup could access the same computing infrastructure as a Fortune 500 company. The barrier between having an idea and building it dropped to nearly zero. Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, Pinterest, entire generations of transformative companies built their infrastructure on AWS. Today, AWS generates over $90 billion in annual revenue. Its operating margins are astronomical. It is, by a significant measure, the most profitable division of Amazon, and the financial engine that subsidizes everything else. In the same year AWS launched, Amazon introduced Amazon Prime. The concept was simple. Pay a flat annual fee, initially $79, and get free 2-day shipping on every eligible order. The logistics team ran the numbers and told Bezos it didn't make financial sense. The shipping costs alone would dwarf the membership fees. Bezos understood something they didn't. He wasn't selling shipping. He was selling psychology. A Prime member, having paid for the service, would default to Amazon for every purchase, not because it was always cheaper, but because the marginal cost of each additional order was already paid. The membership fee was a switching cost disguised as a benefit, and the free shipping was a trust builder that would compound over years into habit and loyalty at a scale no marketing campaign could match. Prime now has over 200 million members worldwide. It includes music, video, reading, gaming, grocery delivery, and services that didn't exist when the original concept launched. By 2010, Amazon was no longer a bookstore or even a retailer. It was a platform, an ecosystem, a layer of infrastructure beneath the global economy. It had its own hardware, Kindle, Echo, Fire, its own media studio, its own grocery chain, its own satellite constellation, its own space company. The man who had packed books in a garage in Bellevue had built something that had never existed before. On July 27, 2017, Jeff Bezos briefly became the richest person in the world, surpassing Bill Gates for a few hours before the markets closed. In January, 2018, it became permanent. His net worth reached $105 billion, then $112 billion, then $150 billion. At his peak, Jeff Bezos was worth approximately $211 billion. To put that in context, if you spent $1 million every single day, it would take you nearly 600 years to spend it all. The money was not the story. The money was a byproduct of the story, of decades of decisions made on a 20-year horizon while the rest of the world was thinking in quarters, of a relentless, sometimes brutal, always intentional insistence on building something genuinely useful to human beings. In 2021, Jeff Bezos stepped down as CEO of Amazon. He handed the company to Andy Jassy, the executive who had built AWS from a concept to the most profitable cloud platform in the world. Bezos became executive chairman. He was 57 years old. He had a rocket company. He had a super yacht. He had an 84,000 square foot compound in the Florida Keys. He had, by the measure of the material world, everything. And the 18-year-old who had given his Princeton valedictory speech about colonizing space was still, somewhere inside all of it, making plans. So what do you take from a story like this? What is the lesson when the numbers are so large they stop feeling real? The lesson is not about money. The lesson is about orientation. Jeff Bezos built Amazon on a single, almost obstinate commitment to long-term thinking. When Wall Street demanded profits, he reinvested. When analysts called him reckless, he called it strategy. When his own team said an idea didn't make financial sense in year 1, he asked what it would look like in year 10. He was always thinking 10 years ahead, sometimes 20. The second lesson is about risk, specifically about how we misunderstand it. Most people think risk is the chance that something goes wrong. Bezos thought risk was the chance that you fail to try, the risk of inaction, the risk of the safe choice. He built his entire framework, the regret minimization framework, around the simple idea that the most painful failures are not the ones where you tried and fell short. They are the ones where you never tried at all. And the third lesson, perhaps the most unglamorous and perhaps the most important, is customer obsession. Not customer satisfaction, not customer service. Obsession. The absolute refusal to stop asking what the customer actually needs, even before the customer knows how to ask for it. 2-day shipping, one-click ordering, a recommendation engine that learns what you love. None of these existed before Amazon built them. All of them now feel like they should have always been there. In 1994, a man quit his job on Wall Street, sat in the passenger seat of a car, and wrote a business plan while his wife drove west. His idea was simple: sell books on the internet. He wasn't right about books. He was right about everything else. Jeff Bezos didn't build Amazon. He built the infrastructure of modern life. And he did it by refusing, at every turn, to be afraid of the length of the road ahead. The garage is gone now. The company is a trillion-dollar empire. But somewhere, today, another 29-year-old is staring at a number on a screen, and the number is growing at a speed that doesn't seem possible. And they are doing the math, and they are thinking about being 80 years old. What they decide next, that's the next chapter.